Thank you, Malcolm. Welcome to the Sunday morning service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. Bienvenidos todos al servicio dominical de los Unitarios Universalistas de San Miguel de Allende. Este es un lugar donde podemos traer todo nuestro ser y ser aceptados tal como somos, con amor y amistad. This is a place where we can bring our whole selves and be accepted as we are with love and friendship. Me llamo Cathy Cánepa y voy a servir como líder de servicio esta mañana. My name is Cathy Cánepa and I'm going to be service leader for today. Now, after the service, those on Zoom are invited to stay in the main room for discussion. And if you're visiting, please type your name and where you're from in the chat box so that we can personally greet you afterwards. And those who are with us here in the Aldea can join us for coffee and cookies afterwards, that way. And when you get your coffee and cookies, please, you should take them and go over to the welcome table, which is filled with information and opportunities to join in. Some of the activities coming up, there are 5 neighborhood connection potluck happy hours coming up right after the new year. And don't forget to reserve for our UU Christmas dinner at La Frontera. It's going to be on Christmas Day at 1 p.m. You can get information at the welcome table or ask Ellie Goodwin about it. Is Ellie here today? No. You'll ask her on email. And if we have any visitors here today, would you please stand if you're willing so that we can see who you are and personally invite you to coffee afterwards? Woo. Great. Take a look. Welcome. We do record our Sunday services, and you can find a link to these on our website, UUFSMA.org, as well as events and information on how to become a member. And we're working on it. So it's going to be getting clearer and clearer, but there's a lot that you can find now. And now, please welcome our Minister, Tom Rosiello.
Good morning. As Cathy said, I'm the minister of this fellowship, and it's good to come together again in this season of light. Yesterday was the winter solstice, the day the earth tilts back towards the sun, and today the hours of sunlight began to increase. And as it did for our pagan fair-bearers who celebrated with bonfires on the solstice, that brings us all hope and joy. Now Christmas is just around the corner, and with the posadas in our streets, the concerts of wonderful holiday music, and the parties where we see friends and exchange good wishes, and with all the beautiful lights of Christmas and the decorations, we can't help but feel the Christmas spirit filling our hearts with love and peace and joy. And Hanukkah will begin on Wednesday night. Next week, we will together light the Hanukkah candles, reminding us of the hope that kept the ancient Hebrew people going in the most difficult of times, and that hope that is so essential to our lives today. This is a season of wonder, of beauty, of mystery, where we are invited to embrace the light with all its different and richness of meaning. Lighting a flame is one of the most ancient and universal of religious practices. And it's a practice which we Unitarian Universalists begin our service with each week. It's a way of marking this time as our sacred time. Today, as we light our chalice flame, we again share special chalice lighting words for this season of light. So as Cathy lights, please join in first the English and then the Spanish words that will appear on the screen. Candles, fire, and stars. These are the symbols of this season. Candles to dispel the darkness and mark our days of celebration. Fires to drive away the winter chill and warm hearth and home. Stars to fill us with wonder and guide us on our sacred journey.
Velas, fuegos y estrellas. Estos son los símbolos de esta temporada. Velas para disipar la oscuridad y marcar nuestros días de celebración. Incendios para ahuyentar el frío invernal y calentar el hogar y la casa. Estrellas para llenarnos de asombro y guiarnos en nuestro viaje sagrado.
Today our service is labeled a Christmas carol service. It's a service where we'll sing carols, many of them written by Unitarian Universalists. Some religious, some secular, some fun, some more serious. We'll also share some stories about those carols, and even reading from the famous novel written by Unitarian Charles Dickens, aptly named A Christmas Carol. So if you are not fully yet in the holiday spirit, I hope you will be by the time the service ends. You know, often Christmas carols are an invitation to embrace the biblical story of the birth of Jesus, to figuratively speaking, come to Bethlehem. And in this vein, none is more famous than the one with which we'll open our service. All around the world and in untold numbers of different languages, but almost always to the same simple tune, Christmas services will begin with the singing of O Come, All Ye Faithful, or Adeste Fideles. It's number 253 in the gray hymnal. We'll sing one verse in English, verse 1 in English, and verse 1 again in Latin. And you'll notice that in the chorus in your book, they only put the chorus in Latin, but when we do the English verse, we'll sing it in English, so you know it. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. So please stand, follow in your hymnals or on the screen, and sing out, O come, all ye faithful.
please remain standing, I invite you to join together in reciting this fellowship's unique covenant. This is our promise that we aspire to of how to be in relation to each other and the larger world. Sebastián is going to lead us first in English and then in Spanish.
We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant. Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Thank you, Sebastián. You may be seated.
In ancient times, candles were mounted on wagon wheels, and they were decorated with evergreens. And they were lit during the dark weeks leading up to the winter solstice, when the return of the light was celebrated. Christians adopted a similar practice of lighting candles on a wreath during the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas, celebrating the light that Jesus brought into the world. Each candle stands for one of the themes of the season. Those themes are beautifully expressed in our holiday carols as well. So this week, as we light each candle, we'll sing a few verses of some wonderful carols that particularly remind us of the message of that part of the season. You may remain seated so you can see the words on the screen. If you're here at the Aldea, some of the carols are in the gray hymnal, and the numbers and verses are listed in your order of service as well. We'll light our first candle on the wreath for hope. In the Christmas story, the hope of the Jewish people meets their fears in a little town of Bethlehem. I invite you now to sing a verse of that carol. We light our second candle for peace. In 1849, Unitarian minister Edward Hamilton Sears wrote, "It came upon the midnight clear." Although it certainly references the biblical story, this carol about putting an end to war and ushering in a time of peace was written in response to the events of Sears' own time, in particular, the Mexican-American War. You'll notice that unlike most carols, this one is not an account of what happened 2,000 years ago, but rather a call to hear the message of peace and goodwill today. A Poem Upon the Midnight Clear is found in the hymnal at number 244, and we'll sing all the verses of his wonderful poem. The words will also appear on the screen. We light our third candle for love. The Christmas story brings that message of love home to us in the purest of ways, that of the love of a mother for her newborn child. It is a love of a mother keeping her newborn warm in a stable on a silent and peaceful night, singing a lullaby to a child. Silent Night is a lullaby, a Christmas love song to a newborn child. So please join in singing first one verse in English and then one verse in Spanish.
Oh
We light the pink candle on our wreath for joy. Yes, many traditional carols express joy for the birth of Jesus, but so too many of our December holiday traditions, including the hanging of the greens and the lighting of bonfires and Yule logs, began as celebrations of the winter solstice. And no carol captures that aspect of joyful celebration better than Deck the Halls. Deck the Halls is number 235 in your hymnal. The words will appear on the screen. Please join in singing. Turn around and look what just appeared when we donned We Now Gay Apparel. All of a sudden, this lit up in the back. Okay.
This is what we're looking at.
Are you getting in the spirit? It's a little tiring. Okay. All right, come on. Oh, wait a minute. All right, I'm only going to keep it a minute because I get too hot. Okay. Let's put it over there. I'd wear it, but I'll overheat. Okay, I need to take a breath. This congregation strives to always be a caring community. We're here for each other in good and joyful times and in difficult times. If at any time you need the assistance of a minister or help from our care team, please know we're here, even in the holiday season. Information on how to contact us is on the website UUFSMA.org. Each week in our service, we share significant joys, sorrows, and concerns of our members and friends. And as we share each one, we light a candle, indicating that that person or that thought or that prayer is held in all of our hearts this morning. If you wish to share, if you wish to have a joy shared or concern or sorrow at an upcoming service, please email it to me, or as many people did this morning, write it on a card as you come in. If you are on Zoom, you can type it into the chat now. And I'm not seeing chat, so hang on one sec. There it is. Okay. Okay. So let's start with a couple of joys. Hillary Durula wrote that my grandkids, Benjamin and Carolyn, arrived this afternoon to spend Christmas with me, and I'm over the moon. And Cathy and Dan are feeling likewise as their son arrives today and the rest of the family arrives on Thursday. Gary Tanner writes, to see that the niñas and the niños of the world are doing better when assisted by the authorities is a joy. We also light a candle of concern, but joy too, for Dan Wiley, who took a nasty fall earlier this week and got a gash in his head, but spent a night in the hospital and is recovering well. And one of continued well wishes to Jerry Fastrup, who is at home recovering. I want to take a moment to, as we celebrate here, recognize that as we engage in the joy of the holiday season and we light candles for joy, that there are many for whom the holiday season is a difficult time. For those who grieve, for those who are estranged from family, those who are ill, those who are lonely or depressed. So first we light a candle generally of support for them, and then a couple of other candles as well. Nora Cohen asks us to light a candle for her daughter who is estranged, which she says is so hard, and there are no grandchildren. Melinda's concern is that her daughter, Cathy, is suffering and has gone pretty much to no contact with them, with her and Kevin. I also want to share with you that this week we lost an active member of our congregation. On Wednesday, Shoshana Levinson passed away in Connecticut. She passed peacefully, surrounded by the love of her husband, Chris, and family. Shoshana and Chris were not able to be here recently in San Miguel much, but they love San Miguel. And for the past several years, they have been faithful attendees almost every Tuesday morning to the minister's coffee hour chat. And in fact, she was on last Tuesday from her hospital bed, really not able to speak much at that turn, but smiling. And it shows our Zoom outreach, what effect it has for people. A more complete, I'm waiting for some info from Chris, but a more complete announcement will go out to all the members of the fellowship this week. So this candle is for Shoshana and another one in support of Chris. Diego? Okay, let me see what we got. All right. Kirsten asks that may all living Indigenous have all their basic needs met. David and Sylvia Steer, it's Sylvia's birthday next Saturday and they light a joy. Lee Knox, I'm joyful that my sister, Lynn Knox, I'm joyful that my sister Lee is 5 years free of lung cancer. Diego, did I miss any? Let me just back scroll. This gets a little complicated. I think I got them all. Okay. Our concerns are not, of course, limited to members and friends of our fellowship. And we do, once again, light the blue and yellow candle for those who are suffering the effects of the unjust and unprovoked war in Ukraine. We remember them especially at this time of year. We light our other large candle for the lives lost and all those displaced and suffering in the Middle East. For a ceasefire, we pray. We pray for the release of all hostages safe. We pray for a path to peace which recognizes the equal worth and dignity of every person. Finally, we light a candle for those joys, sorrows, and concerns that are unspoken. We take a moment to hold all those spoken and unspoken in our hearts this morning. We pray that we may have the courage to honestly address our own challenges, seeking help when we need to, and we resolve to comfort and support and assist others who are experiencing difficult times. I now invite those of you who wish to come forward to light a candle in silence to give witness to whatever you are holding in your hearts to do so this morning. I want to share with you a reading of a Christmas story which, next to the biblical Christmas story, is probably the most famous Christmas story in the world. This story is said to define the modern spiritual celebration of Christmas as a time of generosity, sharing, and goodwill towards all, especially those in need. The book, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickinson, who started life as an Anglican, but by the time he wrote this book was an active Unitarian, a member of Little Portland Street Chapel in London. He wrote this story after a visit to the United States where he met with Channing and Emerson and many other famous Unitarians. Here are some words from a letter he wrote back to them after returning to England. I have carried into effect an old idea of mine and joined the Unitarians, who would do something for human improvement and practice charity and tolerance. A little context for this wonderful novel. Once upon a time, of all good days of the year, upon a Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting, foggy weather, and the city clocks had just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open that he might keep his eye on his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room. And so surely as the clerk came in with the shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation Scrooge had of his approach. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug!" "Christmas? A humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure." "I do. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. A time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen of months presented dead against you. If I had my will, every idiot who gives about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart." "Uncle, nephew, keep Christmas in your way and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it? But you don't keep it." "Well, let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you, much good has it ever done you." There are many things from which I might have derived good, from which I have not profited. I dare say Christmas among the rest. But I'm sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it comes round, apart from the veneration due to its sacred origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow travelers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good, and I say God bless it. The clerk in the tank involuntarily applauded. "Let me hear another sound from you," Scrooge said, "and you will keep your Christmas by losing your situation." And to his nephew, "You're quite a powerful speaker, sir," he added. "I wonder why you have not gone into Parliament." "Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow." Scrooge refused. "I'm sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. I've come in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon, and a Happy New Year. Good afternoon." The clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let two other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands and bowed to him. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. "Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?" "Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night." "At this festive time of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, taking up his pen, "it's more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provisions for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly. Many thousands are in want of common necessities, hundreds of thousands in want of common comforts. Are there no prisons? Plenty of prisons, but under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the unoffending multitude, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it's a time of all others when we want it keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?" "Nothing." "Oh, you wish to remain anonymous." "I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, this is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the prisons and the workhouses, and they cost enough. And those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they would rather die, then they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population." At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. With an ill-will Scrooge dismounting from his stool, tacitly admitting the fact to the expectant clerk in the tank, who instantly snuffed out his candle and put on his hat. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?" "If quite convenient, sir." "It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you would think yourself mightily ill-used, wouldn't you?" "Yes, sir." "And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wage for no work?" "It's only once a year, sir." "A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. But be here all the earlier the next morning." The clerk promised he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. That night, Scrooge was visited by first Marley's ghost, who warned him to change his ways, and 3 additional ghosts. First, the ghost of Christmas past takes Scrooge to the scene of his boyhood, reminding him of a time when he was more innocent. The second, the ghost of Christmas present, takes Scrooge to several different places, including the family home of Scrooge's near impoverished clerk, Bob Cratchit, and frail crippled son, Tiny Tim. He sees the family suffering the loss of that child. and barely getting by, in order to demonstrate Scrooge's responsibility for his fellow human beings, this second dream comes. The third ghost, the ghost of Christmas yet to come, presents Scrooge with a horrible vision of what his future will be if he does not take heed of what he's learned and witnessed in these visitations. Scrooge wakes up Christmas morning, resolved to change his ways. He spends the day with his nephew's family after anonymously sending a prize turkey to the Cratchit home for Christmas dinner. Scrooge has become a different man overnight, embodying the spirit of Christmas. The story closes with Scrooge's encounter with Bob's Cratchit the next day. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1:15. No Bob. Bob was a full 18 and a half minutes late. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him when he came into the tank. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," Scrooge growled in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I'm sorry, sir, I'm behind my time." "You are? Yes, I think you are." "Step this way, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated." "I was making rather merry yesterday, sir." "Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore," Scrooge continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore, I'm going to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," Scrooge said, with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, as he slapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you in many years. I will raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Bob, make up the fires and buy a second coal shuttle before you don't dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Old Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good of a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived in that respect upon total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that truly be said of us, all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.
We are coming to the end of a year of warm fellowship and caring for each other. We've aimed to create together inspiring, joyful, and sometimes challenging services. As you say, come as you are. We hope you don't leave that way. As we collect the offering, know that it is to support the existence and operations of this wonderful community. I urge you to check that you have finished fulfilling your 2024 pledges if you haven't already done so. And today, in this season of generosity, consider an extra holiday gift to the fellowship if you are able, so that we might continue to improve in serving all of our members and friends. The offering will now be very gratefully received.
I want to share with you another little story, a true story, as told by Robert Fulghum in his book, It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It. It's a story about a man named James Pierpont. James Pierpont died a failure. In 1866, he came to the end of his days working a menial file clerk job in a government office. His life had been a long string of defeats, of failures. Things began well enough. He graduated from Yale, which, by the way, his grandfather had helped to found. He chose education as a profession with some enthusiasm, and he was a failure as a school teacher. He was too easy on his students. And so he turned to the legal world, and he was a failure as a lawyer. He was too generous to his clients and too concerned about justice to take the cases that really brought the good fees. The next career he took up was a dry good merchant. He was a failure as a businessman. He couldn't charge enough for his goods to make a profit and was way too liberal with credit. In the meantime, he'd been writing poetry, and though some was published, he didn't collect enough royalties to make a living. He was a failure as a poet. So he decided to become a minister. And he went to Harvard Divinity School. And he was ordained a Unitarian minister at Hollis Street Church in Boston. But his position for prohibition and against slavery got him cross-rides with the influential members of that congregation, and he was forced to resign. He was a failure as a minister. Politics seemed to be a place where he could make some difference. He was nominated as the Abolitionist Party candidate for governor of Massachusetts. He lost. Undaunted, he ran for Congress under the banner of the Free Soil Party. He lost. He was a failure as a politician. The Civil War came along and he volunteered as a chaplain in the 22nd Regiment of the Massachusetts Volunteers. 2 weeks later, he quit, having found the task too much of a strain on his health. He was 76 years old. He couldn't even make it as a chaplain. Someone found him an obscure job in the back office of the Treasury Department in Washington, and he finished out the last 5 years of his life as a menial file clerk. And he wasn't very good at that either. His heart wasn't in it. James Pierpont died a failure. He had accomplished nothing he set out to do or be. But from this distance in time, one might say that he was not, in fact, a failure. His commitments to social justice, his desire to be a loving human being, his active engagement in the great issues of his time, these are not failures. And much of what he thought of as a defeat became success. Education was reformed, legal process was improved, credit laws were changed, and above all, slavery was abolished once and for all. But in one other very important sense, James Pierpont was certainly not a failure. In fact, every year, come December, we, probably unknowingly, celebrate his success. We carry in our hearts and minds a lifelong memorial to him. It's a song, not about Jesus or angels or even Santa Claus. It's a terribly simple song about the simple joy of whizzing through the cold of winter in a sleigh pulled by one horse, and with a company of friends laughing and singing all the way. It's a very simple song that 300 or 400 million people around the world know and sing. For most, it's a song about something they have never done, but can imagine. A song when just the first few notes are played, we're all in the spirit of Christmas. Yes, James Pierpont, who failed at just about everything he tried, wrote Jingle Bells. Please join in singing it now. The words will be on the screen. Thank you for being with us today, either in person or with us on Zoom. If you are here in San Miguel and you're in the mood for singing more carols, Malcolm and I will be leading a carol singing Los Frailes in the park Los Enamorados, which is the park where the market is on Saturday if you've ever been there. It's at 6 p.m. tonight. There'll be candles, bring a jacket and maybe a flashlight if you would like to come and sing some more carols. I'd like to close with some words from a benediction from a rather unlikely source. This benediction was written by Calvin Coolidge. Christmas is not a time or a season, but a state of mind, to cherish peace and goodwill, to be plenteous in mercy, is to have the real spirit of Christmas. If we think of these things, there will be born in us a Savior, and over us will shine a star, sending its gleam of hope into the world. We extinguish our flame, but we send you off with a merry and blessed Christmas wish. And I invite you to help us conclude our time by sharing a holiday good wishes with each other in song. The words will appear on the screen shortly. They're also printed in your order of service, so if you'd like to stand up and join in singing, we wish you a Merry Christmas. And as soon as we're done singing, please be seated because Malcolm has a really jazzy arrangement for you, take off on it for you to enjoy. So we wish you a Merry Christmas.